Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 6 of Deuces Wild, our DodgersNation.com podcast. I'm your host, JB, and once again, our show, as always, our show is sponsored by CollectSuperProducts.com. That's CollectSuperProducts.com. Collect Super Products is a U.S. producer of the finest certified autograph and collectible goods featuring limited edition pieces with state-of-the-art technology. For all of your great memorabilia, make sure you visit CollectSuperProducts.com. All right, so here we are again, Deuces Wild, episode 6. We're a couple of weeks into the season already. And, you know, it's actually our very first podcast episode, my first episode with you all, since the season actually started. And I was going to have produce a show a little over a week ago when there was an off day. And especially around opening day when folks were still a little bit frustrated. That series after the San Francisco Giants didn't go so well. I mean, I myself included posted some things on Twitter, I'm sure, that were a little bit disheartening as a fan, as many of you felt, as we saw the bullpen just kind of collapse for a couple of games up in San Francisco. But now here we are, and I'm recording this as we are now 10-6 after the Dodgers just finished a nice little road trip here in Atlanta, taking 2 out of 3, and Kershaw getting this victory. I'm not sure if he recorded the victory today, but I'm giving him the victory because he had another outstanding outing today. And here we are. 16 games into the season. I've always said that the first 20 games, you start to get a pretty good feel. The Dodgers are 10-6. They are technically in first place, and I say technically because it's still early, and everyone is within 3 games, I think, in the Western Division. But now I think we've gotten to see enough of the Dodgers here a couple of weeks into to start to see some of the weaknesses, some of the positive things that are going on, start to judge Dave Roberts a little bit because that's what we do here on Deuces Wild, and I'm sure that's what all of you do out there in internet world and all those kinds of things. And so I want to dive into that today. And normally, you know, I do have a co-host. We've had writers, our own writers co-hosting with me. Today I decided I'm going to fly solo. I'm going to do a little bit of, I guess you can say, some Colin Cowherd, if you will, and fly solo. So bear with me, and you can let us know what you think. But I think there's a lot to be said, and I wanted to set the stage. And we have some great people lined up in the future who will be on the show with me, and we'll get to that later on. But I really wanted to spend some time just with you, myself, talking about what I like so far after 16 games, a 10-6 record. What are some of the things here that we're missing that I'd like to see from the Dodgers? And some final thoughts on some things that I've observed, and also some final thoughts on Curt Schilling, as just this week we saw that ESPN baseball, or former ESPN baseball analyst now, I should say, Curt Schilling was fired. And so we'll get to that in a moment, give you some thoughts about that. So things that I like so far. Here we are, 10-6 now, 16 games in the season. What are some of the things that Jay here, I find that I can tolerate? Well, Dave Roberts, let's start with Dave. Dave has done a pretty good job, I'd like to think. I think Dave Roberts is a positive. I'm putting him on that column of things that I like so far here in 2016. You know, the lineups have been relatively good for what you see with the injuries we've had and what the Dodgers have to play with and the cards that he has dealt. Night after night, I do appreciate how Dave Roberts gets creative with the lineup. It's not a set lineup. Part of that, of course, is with injuries to Carl Crawford and Andre Ethier. But with what we have, the team has been doing relatively well. The way he's been able to place Kike Hernandez when he needs to be in there. I know some of us, myself included, have said that we'd love to see Kike there more often in the lineup. But you have to appreciate what Howie Kendrick is doing when he's out in left field. I mean, he's not an outfielder by trade. I mean, he's played outfield in the past, maybe a couple of handfuls of time. I think 26, 27 times I read for the Angels at one point. And it had been a few years since he'd done that. But I like Dave Roberts' mentality of, I need to score runs. We need to produce as many runs as possible. And I know that sounds very simplistic, but I like to see that lineup when he doesn't have an Andre Ethier out there right now, doesn't have a lot of options in the outfield. Not that we're missing much with Carl Crawford, because as far as I'm concerned, they can let Carl Crawford go, and I'll be happy if I never had to see him again. Quite honestly, I would just give that guy away. I would give him away. I would cut him from the team, pay his salary, call it a loss, call it a night, but he's hurting you more than he is doing anything else. I mean, Carl Crawford has no business in a Dodger uniform, in my opinion. So we're not losing anything there, in my opinion. But But when you have Chase Utley, and that's another one of these positives that I've jotted down here on things that I like so far in 2016. Chase Utley's playing real well. Chase Utley looks good. Chase Utley is old. Is he going to be this strong all year long? Probably not. When a guy gets that age and you got a lot of miles on you, you're going to begin to start to wear and tear as the season comes around. Once July hits, I think we're going to see him become a little bit more brittle. But for right now, you got to go with the hot hand. And I think what I'm appreciating is that Dave Roberts sees that. As Dave Roberts says, I'm going to put out the best lineup right now. I recognize that Chase Utley is hot, and I'm going to put him out there. Defensively, he's not a liability. He's a great defensive player. And offensively, he's been producing, and we need to produce offensively. But how could I also maximize Howie Kendrick, who's just a great guy all around to have in the lineup? You put him in left field right now, and you have that spot open because you don't have the maximum amount of outfielders you really need. So it's great to see how he's maneuvering that lineup and really playing those matchups very well. So I definitely appreciate that. Keeping Howie Kendrick, getting him his at-bats where he needs to, getting Utley in that lineup as much as possible because he has been hot, and we all know that Utley is just a great presence all around. I think this is a guy who we're definitely going to see as a coach at some point. I would love to see him on the bench managing at some point, and hopefully it's with the Dodgers down the line because I think he has the chops for it. So those are some of the things that I've really liked that I've seen so far. He's been creative with the lineup. The lineup is doing well, and they're producing. Look, right now as it ranks, going into today's game, before Thursday's game against Atlanta, the Dodgers were 5th in Major League Baseball in hitting. That's very good. It's very good. Now, that still means there's 4 other teams that are better than you. And if the goal is to win the World Series, I think you need to inch a little bit closer and look at what the gap is between you as number 5 and the other 4 teams and the number 1 team. But the Dodgers offensively are maintaining kind of where they've been, and that's 5th in baseball. I think it's a little bit better so far right now than where they were last year. So far we're seeing an improvement in hitting. And that brings me to the next bullet point here of what I like is Yasiel Puig. I've been saying all along that where Yasiel Puig goes, so go the Dodgers, and that's been Puig so far. Just really a treat to see out there. I think for Dodger fans, he's composed himself. He's given great interviews. He's still who he is. But he is. If you haven't seen Yasiel Puig, and I know a lot of us can't watch games on television, but if you've been to the games or you've got you got a glimpse of Puig, just watch him run from home plate to first base. I mean, it's a difference. Just the first game I saw this guy take off to first, and he was out, ground ball, routine ground ball. But the way he ran to first, as if you put a lamb chop in front of a lion or whatever Vin Scully likes to say, that's the way he ran right through that base. And that tells you a lot about where the guy's head is right now. He's in the game, and he wants to be the best in the game. And so far he's showing us that he's going to do everything possible. He's producing. He's looking good out there. The team is looking good. It is very important that where Puig goes, that's where the team is going to go. Especially when Gonzo is just Gonzo. I mean, Gonzalez is still Gonzalez, right? That's a treat so far in 2016 that he is who he is. I mean, he's super hot at the beginning of the year, and then as he gets to the middle to the end, he'll start to cool off a little bit. But overall, he's going to have another good year, and he's staying in good shape. So those two guys are really giving you what you're hoping they're going to give you because those are the guys that you really are depending on in the middle of that lineup. So that's great to see. I also don't mind the way that Roberts is putting together this lineup. I think with what you have and the different rotations at the top of the lineup, especially leading off, has been very strong. When you don't really have a true leadoff guy. I mean, I think that a guy like Kike, when he's in the lineup, can act as your leadoff guy. But quite honestly, from what I'm seeing offensively, folks, I'm definitely not missing Carl Crawford, and I think most of us would be in agreement with that. Where many of you may disagree with me is that I don't see where we still need Andre Ethier. I really don't. I've never been a huge Ethier fan, and I know I'm probably alienating about half of you when I say that I'm not an Ethier fan, and that's okay. I'm up for debate. But I don't think we're missing him. And for what he's getting paid and for some of the guys we have on this lineup, I think we can get just as good of a production from some of the guys that we got out there, even guys like Trace Thompson and what have you. They still got ways to go, but the options right now that they have, I don't see us missing Andre Ethier. Does that mean that the outfield is perfect? No. Look, Jock Peterson is doing all right. He's not showing us the superstar status yet that we're expecting, quite honestly, right? We were promised and we were shown Jacques Peterson in AAA from 2 years ago that was just a beast. And so he hasn't showed us yet what he could do at the major league level. He's up to about 270 right now. He's got a couple of home runs. It's not bad. The guy will always have power, but the problem is striking out. The problem is putting the ball on the bat. And so hopefully we'll see that soon, but there's something to be desired there still with Jacques Peterson. But he's hanging in there. He's doing okay. He's earning a spot there so far. So as you go around the rotation overall, the lineup overall is looking pretty good. Is looking good. Seager's starting to kind of struggle a little bit, but I think he's going to be all right at the end of the day. But overall, you're getting decent production from this offense. I still would like us to see more pop out there, and would have liked to have seen another big name out in the outfield, perhaps. But given that that's what we've been dealt with so far, I think the team is doing okay. Moving along, also the starting staff. The starting staff, a lot of criticism coming into the starting rotation. I put the starting staff so far as a positive overall. The starting staff, is sixth in baseball overall. Which is pretty good, which is pretty good coming in, but they can do a lot better. And pardon me, the entire pitching rotation, the starting staff, is above the top there. But when you look at 1, 2, and 3, you're getting what you're getting from Kershaw. You're getting what you're getting from Maeda. Maeda has been, there's nothing that I can say here that none of us have already said about Kenta Maeda. King Kenta, as some folks are already coining for the guy, maybe prematurely, but it's a lot of fun. He's outstanding. He's just putting up some outstanding numbers, and you're definitely getting more than your money's worth with a guy like that. And he has really been the saving grace so far for the starting rotation for the Los Angeles Dodgers. When we came into a season thinking that a guy like Corey Seager was going to be your potential National League Rookie of the Year, I think Maeda now could end up being your National League Rookie of the Year. So you may have two guys at the top racing here at the very end of the season to get to that Rookie of the Year prize, but it could be Maeda, so let's not count him out. But when you look at the rotation so far, they've been pretty fortunate at the 1, 2, and 3 with a guy like Stripling. Now, I know Stripling's not a number 3 pitcher yet, but I'm going to put him as a top 3 because, quite frankly, he's been at the top 3. Stripling has showed us some pretty good performances. The Dodgers have been very fortunate to get those kind of performances from a guy like this who they did not know what to expect when they put him out there here in 2016. And he's been impressive, of course. But you get to the 4 and 5 spot, and that's a lot left to be desired, right? So we're going to get to the 4 and 5 here in a second. Speed is looking a lot better. I think that's something I like here so far in the first couple of weeks of the season. The speed is there, right? The speed is doing well. I feel like there's a more emphasis on being a little bit more aggressive on the base pads this year under a Dave Roberts management than there was last year with Mattingly. So I think that's a big plus. And again, I did mention Chase Utley. I think we can all be very happy with what we're getting there so far in the second base slot from Chase Utley. Now, some of the negatives and some of the things now that many of you have been talking about, that does not excuse the Dodgers, because so far I know I'm painting a really pretty picture. But that does not excuse the Dodgers organization for what they knew coming in was going to be a problem and not addressing it. Number one is the end of that rotation. 4 and 5 is a huge problem. You've got Alex Wood with a 5.06 ERA. That's not good. That's number 5 spot status for most teams. But if you're trying to win a championship, that's not really acceptable. You got Scott Kazmir at 6.43. He's supposed to be your number 3 starter, and the guy's got an ERA of over 3. So when you're carrying two guys like this, one with a 5 ERA, the other one with almost 6.5, that's not very good, and that's going to hurt you now. And that's going to put a strain on a bullpen that, has been doing okay, but quite frankly has been pretty brittle so far. So, I understand the injuries to Ryu, but we knew about those injuries way before spring training. It's not something that just popped up. Brett Anderson, I get that. He's not there. You still got Brandon McCarthy, who was just a disaster of a contract to begin with. Should have never happened. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Brandon McCarthy will be our Darren Dreifort. He will be our Darren Dreifort for the next couple of years. So this is something they've dealt to themselves, and ownership has kind of gone in and said, we're going to go with this and see what happens. And there's just too many weak spots in that starting rotation. It's not bad, but it's not sustainable, and especially not something if you want to go beyond the first round in the playoffs and not get bounced like you did by the New York Mets in 2015. When you move on to the bullpen is 15th best in Major League Baseball right now. Okay, if you want to go by statistics, ESPN is ranking them at 15. When you put all the statistical analysis together, they're 15 best. That's very mediocre, right? You're not at the bottom. You're not at the top. You're literally in the middle of 30 teams. You're not going to win a World Series with a 15th best bullpen. That's going to be very, very tough to do. Your starting lineup better be number 1 or 2 best in Major League Baseball. You better be scoring some runs at that level if you're going to be able to carry a bullpen that's mediocre. And so far, the Dodgers have been able to wing it, and they've been doing okay. But, boy, did we see some pretty nasty games up in San Francisco in that first week that was pretty disheartening. And you can't blame the manager. You can't blame anybody else, but you got to blame the people up in the front office again, right? That's ownership for you. That's what this Dodgers ownership has been doing. And they've dealt the bullpen. They just figured we're going to see what happens. It's the same bullpen from last year, pretty much, and this is what you're getting. Although, one thing I did forget to say that I feel is a positive, that is, I think is working well for them, is Kenley Jansen. And Kenley Jansen is a good reliever, and he's turning out to be better than what we thought. And last year he had a good season, but a lot of folks out there were still skeptical, and I've always been a little skeptical. But he's doing great. He's doing great as a closer. He's doing what he's supposed to be doing, and I think we're very happy with Kenley Jansen. But it's getting to Kenley Jansen right now that is a problem for the Dodgers. And I'm not trying to be a negative guy here going in. I know the Dodgers are looking okay. But if we're trying to put the Dodgers up against championship caliber teams, when you look at teams like the Chicago Cubs, are we as good as them? And that's really where the Dodgers have to be pointing themselves right now. And I don't think the bullpen is, and the rotation still leaves a lot to be desired if you want to get way above just winning the division. So those are some areas right now that are still very concerning here in these first couple of weeks with the Dodgers. The other thing, too, folks, and this also is one that's always a point of contention with fans, is A.J. Ellis. In my opinion, Clayton Kershaw really needs to find a new friend, because the only reason why A.J. Ellis has a job is because of Clayton Kershaw. The guy's awful. The guy can't hit. A.J. Ellis really does need to find a new friend, and so does Kershaw. And so when the guy's hitting about $150 or so, look, if you're not hitting somewhere around the Mendoza line and above at the very least, you got no business in Major League Baseball. That's always been my opinion. And he's got to be some kind of guy behind the plate. I mean, you better be Benito Santiago behind home plate if I'm going to tolerate that kind of a batting average. And I'm not a big fan of A.J. Ellis behind the plate. I don't think he blocks the plate very well. I think a lot of those balls that go right between him that get called as wild pitches are really pass balls, to be honest with you. I think good catchers will stop those. He can call a decent game, no question about that. But so can Yasmani Grandal, and so can Austin Barnes. You got a guy like Austin Barnes who came up, who has a nice bat, he's a nice catcher, and you send him back down. So you have options. It's not like the Dodgers don't have options. A.J. Ellis, I really, really hope this is his final season in a Dodger uniform because that's a hole in the lineup. You can't have that at the bottom. You can't really have 8 and 9 guys, number 8 and number 9, a pitcher and a guy like Ellis at the bottom, and those are 2 automatic outs. I'll take 1 automatic out in the National League, but not 2. I mean, that's pretty bad. And so that's something that's still kind of annoying here in the first couple of weeks to see A.J. Ellis struggling. And some of you are going to point to the playoffs and say, well, Ellis was strong in the playoffs. I think we played 4 games last year in the playoffs. So, I'm not going to assess you by 3 or 4 games and say you're amazing in the offseason. I want to see a life of playing in the playoffs and putting in 25 games or so in the postseason to say you're a postseason guy. So I'm just not sold with A.J. Ellis yet, and I think that's something I'd like to see solved at some point. Even as a backup, I'm not thrilled with AJ. So that's kind of the overall feeling, I think, with the Dodgers and kind of where we're at right now so far going in to the first couple of weeks. Again, 10-6, they're looking good. They're in first place. They're okay. But if you're starting to look ahead, and I think Dodger fans are looking ahead, we're always looking at playoffs because we're spoiled and we've won the division for a few years in a row here now. You got to think that way. We know that this team is good, but are they good enough to win and beat the real good teams when it comes to October? So I think that's the question we got to ask ourselves here as we start to end the month of April. Okay. A couple of last thoughts here for this show. We got some good news down in the farm from Yusniel Diaz. Yusniel Diaz is the Cuban gentleman, 19-year-old, who was signed in the offseason. The Dodgers paid about $30 million for him, if you recall. And he's been in Rancho Cucamonga, and had a kind of a rough start in the minor leagues, but has gone 8 for the last 24, hit 3 home runs already, has been showing some power. He's definitely showing that poise and some of the signs of what they liked when they scouted him out in Cuba. So the Dodgers are pretty excited so far from what they're seeing now from the prospect Yusniel Diaz down in the farm. Don't believe you're going to see him anytime soon this season. He's only 19 years old, but you never know. If you get around to enough injuries again in this league, you never know when a guy like that could be given a chance upstairs here in the majors. So good luck to him, and we'll be watching him very, very closely. A couple of the things that I want to know from you, and maybe you can comment here on our YouTube page or comment or send me a mention on Twitter. And again, you can follow me on Twitter at JBNation. And when you look at other guys, you start to see, you start to listen to what the Dodgers have been telling us for a while now, that we have such a rich farm system, that we have the best farm system or the number 2 or number 1 farm system rated. And this is not the Dodgers telling us this, right? This is a lot of different magazines, a lot of different baseball rankings out there that are saying, hey, the Dodgers have an amazing minor league system, and it's the best it's been in many, many years, and it's very exciting. Where are those guys? Where are those prospects right now? And why aren't we seeing them? So some of those guys are struggling right now. And perhaps we're going to see them in a couple of years. But the problem I have right now, this leads me into one of the last comments that I wanted to make about ownership and how I'm still disappointed and still going to criticize ownership. That the emphasis has been so strong on building a minor league system, but a minor league system that's still years away from really producing at the major league level. Are we still continuously ignoring what's going on in the big leagues? I don't see a sense of urgency. I still don't see it even 2 weeks into the season or 3 weeks into the season from this ownership about, do we have a team here at the major league level that can win a World Series today? Not 3 years from now, today. I still don't believe we do. I hope I'm wrong, but today I don't think the Dodgers win the World Series. I still don't think they win the National League Championship Series with the team they have right now. Even if they get some of those guys back from injury. I really don't. So I hope that if we're this close, and that's the thing I think annoys me the most, is that I feel that the Dodgers are so close to winning, so close to really kind of just breaking that ceiling and being championship caliber, that this ownership is just not making that investment at the major league level to put us over the hump, because I think that's where we need to get over the hump, especially when you look at where we are right now. We're right there. There's some weaknesses. You'll always have weaknesses, but this is not the dominant team that it really should be, especially with the kind of payroll that they're carrying. So I hope that ownership can leverage what they've got in the farm to build something here this year and next year to get us close to the World Series and get us in there. But we keep talking about this farm, but I want to see something up here very soon. If these guys are not ready to produce today, then a nice little trade could be in the books here in July or in August, so we can build up what we've got. Because, again, I think we're going to be in the hump right there. I think we're going to be around 90 wins. I don't think this team will get to 95, 96 victories. I could be wrong. But, again, it's going to be too competitive. And they're letting the teams like San Francisco, who I don't think is all that great. I don't think San Francisco is all that great. Everyone loves San Francisco. A lot of experts are picking San Francisco to win the division. They could. They could beat the Dodgers. The Dodgers are a little bit more beatable this year, I feel, than they maybe were last year. I don't know. You tell me. At best, they're the same team, but I don't believe they're better. And I do believe San Francisco's a little bit better, but I don't believe they're this wonder team that's going to win it on another even year. It's a little bit exaggerated, but You never know. You get into the playoffs, just like our Los Angeles Kings have done here over the last few years. You get into the postseason and you don't know what's going to happen. Although I sit here right before Game 5 and it's not looking good for the Kings, but they could turn that around. I mean, we saw that happen a few years ago when they were down 3-0 to the Sharks. But anyway, so that's my take on that. I really hope there's more urgency. It doesn't mean panic. They're doing well, but be able to see this team and say, look, we're good, but are we good enough to get over that hump and beat these really strong teams in the end? I still think there's something there to be left to be desired, quite frankly, for this team to improve upon. So, a couple of last things before we wrap up. I always like to end on a little bit more of a controversial basis. And the two things, I know the Stripling thing was a big deal. A few weeks ago, when his first outing, you almost saw this young guy come out here and throw a no-hitter. I mean, right? It was pretty amazing to see Stripling come out and just really do something pretty amazing, I think, for the Dodgers. And so some of the big talk around that was, hey, did we keep him? Do we keep him in to let him finish the game? The guy was throwing a no-hitter. He's in 7 innings. He hadn't allowed a hit yet. And we get it. The guy's young. The guy, has had Tommy John surgery in the past. You have him on a pitch count. I understand that. But my take with that is, he's an old minor leaguer. This is not a kid that's 21, 20, or even 22 years old. He's 26 years old, okay? And he'll be 27 in November. So he's still got a way to go. But he's 26 years old, and that's an old minor leaguer. It really is. Who's really just now getting a true chance to make it in the big leagues. And let's call it what it is, folks. In all likelihood, Ross Stripling will be back in the minors at some point this season. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. You're going to get potentially Ryu back. You got to make a spot for him. You're going to get other guys back, and you're going to have to make a spot for them. And the politics that is sports with contracts that these guys carry, you're not going to sit down one of these other big guys with big contracts and put Ross Stripling in there. It should be that way, but it's not that way. And so in all likelihood, this guy will be back in the minors, and in all likelihood, this guy will not have a very long career in the major leagues. I mean, I hope the guy does, as he's doing great, and I say keep him in there. But where I'm going with this is, having said all of that, this guy may not do a lot in the major league level. But when you've got a guy that's got a chance to do something really special, and if I'm in his shoes, I say screw it. I'm going to go for broke here because I know that I may end up back in the minors here very soon with nothing left than to tell a story that I got to play for the Dodgers for a few games. But what a story you can tell to go in history, to be one of the few guys in Dodger history to throw a no-hitter. Really, just a few. And I know we're seeing a lot more no-hitters now in the last 5 years in the majors than we've ever seen before. But it's still a fantastic, fantastic accomplishment. And, and I get it. I see the argument. But I would have liked to see him finish. I would have given the guy the option. If you want to stay in, give me what you got. And the minute the no-hitter's broken, you get him out of the game. And I understand that his dad went to Dave Roberts, and he thanked him with tears in his eyes. Thank you for thinking of my son. But I would ask his dad this. I want to see if he's going to go and hug Dave Roberts when he cuts him from the team and he sends him back to the minors. Think about that. All right, to wrap things up, we want to talk about Curt Schilling. I did mention that I was going to have a quick take on Curt Schilling. All I'm going to say about good old Mr. Schilling is good riddance. I don't know how you feel about Curt Schilling, but besides whatever he's saying off the field or off the broadcast officially about baseball, I hate watching. I just really detest listening to the guy on Sunday Night Baseball. I always felt personally, actually, that he loved to crap on the Dodgers all the time. For whatever reason, he's got a chip on his shoulder about a lot of different guys, a lot of different personalities, and a lot of different teams. And I did not like that. I thought he was very off-putting as a Major League Baseball analyst on Baseball Tonight, Sunday Night Baseball, actually, with ESPN. But aside from that, look, I think ESPN did the right thing. Regardless of what you think about whatever he said, regardless of his politics, regardless of, because he is a little bit extreme and he's got a little bit of Donald Trump in him and he likes to get out there and be a straight shooter, fine. That's what Twitter's for. You can do whatever you want. And this message is really for those of you listeners that are a little bit younger. Some of them are younger millennials. I'm not that old, but I'm not in my 20s anymore. And some of you believe that we are in an age where you can say whatever you want and get away with it. And I got news for you. No, we don't live in that age. When you work for a company, a large organization like ESPN and like many others and jobs that you have and I have out there, in some of these jobs and in most of these jobs, you have to represent your organization in a certain way. And your company has the right to set that standard and those ethics for how you should represent yourself, whether you're on the clock, quote unquote, or not on the clock. And this guy misrepresented himself. He misrepresented what ESPN is about. And ESPN had that right, and I'm glad they exercised it. Because I'm going to tell you what, I would never like a guy like that on my team or in my organization. So I think ESPN made the right call there. Not a fan, never been a fan. Quite frankly, if I had to give Mr. Schilling some advice, I think he should go get a political talk show. He should get his own radio show, his own podcast, perhaps even his own segment on Fox News or whatever he wants to do. I think that's a better life and a better spot for a guy like him, and all power to him, but not in Major League Baseball and not with ESPN. You got to know your role. You got to know where you sit. And I think baseball did the right thing there. ESPN baseball there did the right thing by saying, see you later, Kurt. So wish him the best in other endeavors, but I hope he doesn't return in baseball. It just wasn't pretty. Not my thing. So with that wraps up episode 6 of Deuces Wild here for Dodgers Nation. As always, want to thank our sponsors. I can't do this show without Collect Super Products, so make sure you go to collectsuperproducts.com, one of our official sponsors here for DodgersNation.com and sponsor of the Deuces Wild show. Again, please follow us everywhere. You want to make sure that you subscribe on YouTube to the YouTube channel so you get alerts of all the videos and all the things that my colleague Elisa Hernandez is doing, our podcast and our video cast that I'm doing. You can follow me on Twitter at JB Nation. Look me up at JB Nation and follow Dodgers Nation on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all of that. Make sure you're keeping up. And send me some comments. Send me some questions. Whatever you disagree with me with. I want to hear it. If you send me questions, you send me comments, I promise you that I will read them out on the next episode so we can have a nice it's not a call-in show, unfortunately, not yet. So can't have that open debate, but I'll be glad to answer your questions and your comments over the air here in the next episode. So with that, I'm JB. Thanks for listening. Follow me on Twitter. Keep listening to our show. Don't forget to subscribe. And until next time, we'll see you later.